Invited here as guest of Rabbi Gazinski, who's standing to my immediate right, and we're going to apologize for some of the logistics. As all of you know, this was a rather ad hoc affair. It's been pulled together literally in the last hours. And we had an intervening Shabbat, so nothing could be done from Friday night till Saturday night. So we will appreciate everyone's patience. I'd like to thank Rabbi Gazinski and his Rebbetzin, Connie Gazinski. For opening up the Chabad house to this important event. You're in a base Chabad. This room serves as a house of worship, as a synagogue. In the Jewish world, the synagogue immediately becomes, following prayer, a beis midrash, a place of learning. Midrash, a place of learning, ultimately means speech. In Chassidut, we know that there are three important vessels for the soul of the individual, a soul that we all have. Those three important vessels are machshava, thought, dibur, speech, and ma'aseh, action. We say in Chabad Hasidus, ha'ikar hu ha'maaseh. The principal matter is what you do. Having said that, however, we know that dibur, or speech, are holy vessels. There will not be a word out of anyone's mouth that is not a vessel for holiness or its opposite, God forbid. It is a vessel. So it is important that as we gather here this morning to speak and to exercise our God-given right to speech and our American right to free speech, that we do so civilly, we do so with courteousness, and we do so with menschlichkeit. Before we go any further, it is incumbent on all of us to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, so I'd ask everyone to please rise and follow after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It wasn't too long ago that I was invited to speak on the question of Sharia, the threat doctrine that derives from that, the threat to our freedom and our liberties. And I was given a forum to speak on Shabbat, and then the following Sunday. Rabbi Polikoff sat to my immediate left during the discussions, and insofar as Rabbi Polikoff is a leader and the rabbi of the Great Neck Synagogue, I can only echo what Jeff said. There is no shortage of leadership and courage in the Jewish community in Great Neck. It is manifest through the Men's Club of Great Neck Synagogue. It's manifest through the leadership of the Great Neck Synagogue, led by Rabbi Polikoff. It's led by Rabbi Gazinski and Rebbetzin Gazinski here at the Chabad House. And it's led by all of you. Like many others, I had been involved in public policy and national security questions all my professional career. It wasn't until 9/11, 2001, that I had what oftentimes is referred to as an epiphany. I realized that the threat that we had imagined, the threat that we had thought
and I'm talking about the professional level, was one based upon real estate or political issues, turned out to be something different. The narrative that worldwide terrorism was a Palestinian cause and methodology to achieve political sovereignty in the Middle East turned out not to fit the facts. We had already experienced in the 1990s with the USS Cole, the various attacks on embassies that were not the product of a Palestinian or a Palestinian cause. But it took 9/11, the shock that we all as Americans felt, to wake up and understand that narratives are fine for fairy tales. But if you're going to confront an enemy, and if you're going to confront an enemy at a professional level, you'd better pay attention to the facts. So we looked around, and we began, each of us independently, searching for the connecting dots. I won't get into the substance of what Pamela Geller might speak about. We haven't even spoken about what she intends to talk about here. But having represented her across the United States in federal court, in the trademark office, in state courts, where either we're suing for her right to speak, for example, here in New York, when groups were running anti-Israel ads and blaming Israel and the United States and financial aid for all of the problems, Pamela decided to run, with her partner Robert Spencer, an ad that was quite simple, straightforward. In any war between a civilized man and a savage, support the civilized man. Stop jihad. Stop jihad, support Israel. Simple ad. Did not insult the people, did not insult the religion. Indeed, I dare say that the savages to whom she referred would probably agree that that's the description of their own behavior. The New York City MTA, having run the anti-Israel ads, refused to run her ad. The decision makers were individuals, lawyers, executives, many of them Jewish, but they simply said, we're not going to run the ad because it's disparaging. When Pamela Geller asked, well, is it not disparaging of Jews and Israelis that you blame violence on them and on America for financial aid? And the answer was, it's different. Because your speech might result in violence. And Pamela Geller asked, I'm not violent. My friends aren't violent. Our speech is not violent, and it doesn't call for violence. So who's going to be violent? All of a sudden, the room is silent. We go into federal court in front of Judge Paul Engelmeyer, a new judge, and a bright one, and he looked at the MTA after a full day of hearing and testimony and said, I don't get it. There's a First Amendment. You are censoring Ms. Geller's speech based upon its viewpoint and content, and in this country, that's illegal. Pamela Geller and many others, but especially Pamela Geller, because she exercises her free speech courageously, civilly, but courageously, in venues and in context that would frighten the most courageous of men. One final little anecdote, and I'm going to turn it over to our guest speaker today. When a little Muslim girl in Ohio decided she wanted to leave Islam and exercise her right to freedom of religion, she was 17 years old when at least it was discovered. And her father discovered that she wanted to change her religion. He threatened to kill her in an honor killing. She left home, ran away to fellow parishioners in Florida, where she was sheltered for a while, until the parents found out, went to the authorities, went to court, and forced the Florida authorities to return her to Ohio. There was a custody battle, and throughout this process, Pamela Geller, at her website, atlasshrugs.com, wrote and covered the story. She pounded on the story that this little girl should not be sent to a home where she'll be murdered in an honor killing. As a result, the Ohio authorities agreed that she would remain in state custody, not be returned home, and when she turned 18 and emancipated, she left. As a result of Miss Geller's courageous reporting, and she was singular in covering this story to keep the spotlight on the authorities so this little girl wouldn't simply be shuttled back into a home to be murdered, which occurs daily, not only in other parts of the world, but right here in the United States. And you can see those events captured on Ms. Geller's website. Ms. Geller was sued. She was sued by one of the attorneys for the little girl, who happened to be associated with the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE. Now, I hear some recognition of CARE. CARE is a Muslim Brotherhood Hamas front group. It's been identified as such by the United States government in federal criminal trials. It remains free to operate. It remains free to claim 501c3 status as a charitable organization. And it remains free to receive funds from overseas, you can imagine where, and to spend their money attacking our free speech and our liberty in the disguise of a civil rights organization. He sued Ms. Geller for $10 million. He had all the weight of the organization behind him. Pamela came to us, my partner and I, Robert Muse. We took on the case, and it took a year and a half. A year and a half. But eventually, the plaintiff caved in, dismissed the lawsuit. But that is the kind of assault that Ms. Geller is up against every single day. The protests here in Great Neck are nothing. In fact, I would suggest that the protest over her willingness to speak to us and for us to be willing to listen to her here are a good sign.